Good evening.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. This is week one of our annual horror movies theme month for Halloween, taking place in the month of October. And as become tradition,
our oldest tradition on the podcast.
Well, since our original episode was the original Halloween, because we had the opportunity to see it in theaters, we have continued with a Halloween movie every year. This year, we are now watching the 1988 Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Yes, so we had Halloween. Supposed to be a standalone thing, did so well. Mike Myers was such an iconic character that demand indicated we got to make an immediate sequel, which they did in Halloween 2, and then decision was made, let's do what Carpenter had originally intended to do if this was going to be a franchise, which is do little anthology things on related stories. So they did Halloween 3.
Which was awful.
Which didn't do particularly well, or as well as they hoped, so they decided to return to that marketable property, which is Mr. Myers, with Halloween 4, The Return of Mike Myers. And never again would this franchise revert to anthology format.
Well, and they even try to, again, do away with Michael Myers in this movie.
Yeah, they do. They have an idea for something slightly different, something kind of... there's always been a supernatural element, not so much in the first one, a little bit in the first one, but it had been increasing with each one because it was just more and more ridiculous the way Mike Myers kept surviving. They're like, oh, we got a transitional idea, which I'm pretty sure falls flat in the subsequent films.
This movie, I think the only recurring character in this one is Donald Pleasance playing Dr. Sam Loomis. Is there any other characters I'm missing? There's references to other characters.
Yeah, there's references. We see some pictures of Jamie Lee Curtis.
There's also reference to the old sheriff.
Yeah. You haven't asked me what I thought of this film, or what do you think of this film? What are first impressions?
It was not great. Also, there was a couple things I was intrigued by that maybe we will answer in the trivia. Maybe there is no answer to some of this. Because of a conversation earlier tonight, I kept track of the kill count as depicted in the film.
Okay.
Did you follow that at all?
No, but I can pull it up pretty quick. Aren't you going to ask me my first impressions? Because I've been waiting to give them.
Have you seen this before tonight?
I have not.
Okay, so what are your first impressions?
This is
You just created editing work for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It had to be said.
This is in the pantheon of the bad movies we've watched in this podcast.
This is the... What was the one last year? Critters Returns.
Yeah.
No, it's what was that called? It was Critters something.
Critters Return. I think it was Critters Return. Anyways, yeah.
But it's that of this. Did you not miss Halloween 3?
No.
Watching this?
No.
Halloween 3 is significantly better than this. It is interesting. It has interesting ideas. This is all retread.
It is not that interesting of an idea. Nor was it
It was something different, which is the opposite of what this is.
But it was not so much so better that I would actually rather rewatch that.
I would absolutely rather rewatch.
I would prefer not to watch either of those two again.
Let's deal with the plot very briefly because it's not that important. Some idiot makes the decision to transfer Mike Myers on October the 31st, 10 years after
his
30th.
On Halloween Eve.
10 years after his original escape, also on Halloween Eve. Of course he gets out. Of course he kills a bunch of people. According to this movie, Laurie Strode is dead. It's never really specified how. We know, because there's additional Halloween films with Laurie Strode in them, that she's not really dead. She's in hiding or something. I'm sure they'll explain that.
His transfer was authorized by Dr. Hoffman, played by Michael Pataki.
That was a very Pataki decision. But anyway, he heads back to Haddonfield. Laurie has a daughter named Jamie, who she named after the actress who played her. And Mike Myers goes after to kill her. And I wondered out loud, and we've been doing this podcast since 2019. I don't think I've ever talked through a movie as much as I've talked through this movie. I was almost always talking through it because it was so bad and boring. But I had commented, maybe it's just best to let Michael kill her and end his family line, and then, because that seems to be what he wants, and then maybe he'll leave other people alone. That might have been best.
What happens instead, Nate?
Instead, there's various chaos, and there's a bunch of hillbillies that come to help out the police department, which is massacred, and eventually they've lost communications and they've lost power because there's an incident with Mike Myers at a garage/diner where he causes a telephone pole to catch on fire and
He hits
collapse.
the gas pump, which bursts into flames and blows up Dr. Loomis's car, and the flames spread to the telephone pole and burn the phone lines.
Dr. Loomis has to try to walk to Haddonfield. Some teenagers
Which is 4 hours away.
Some teenagers do a... No, this is much closer. This garage is just a little outside of Haddonfield.
Okay.
But there's these teenagers that pretend they're going to pick him up, and then they speed off, like in Octopussy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny. And then this crazy preacher guy picks him up, and that was just random, and takes him into town.
Reverend Jackson P. Sayer, played by Carmen Philby.
It was just kind of a random character to be in this movie. And he takes Loomis into town, and then various stuff happens in Haddonfield, and Mike Myers kills an electrical engineer named Bucky, because it says that on his helmet, and throws him into a substation, which causes all the power in Haddonfield to go off. And then he goes into the police station and kills all the cops except for like 3 that are not in the station at the time. And this causes the sheriff, who's not the sheriff from the first film because that guy retired. He's the new sheriff, and he knows of Dr. Loomis, and he's smart enough to be like, well, okay, I don't know for certain this is happening, but I'm going to assume Dr. Loomis is correct and that Mike Myers is back, and we're going to take preemptive action to try to save Laurie's daughter. And they end up in his house, and more people
with
get
the
killed.
power out, but yet they have power to run the radio in the basement.
Yeah. I don't know. This isn't very good.
And Michael Myers is magically able to warp because, they're in the school. Rachel sprayed him with the fire extinguisher to get his niece away from him. Runs outside to the truck that has just pulled up outside the school. We don't see no Michael Myers, and the truck leaves the school. Yet Michael Myers is somehow attached to the truck to climb up into the bed of the truck while they're driving down the highway.
This movie is just so cheap. It's just so cheap and derivative, and it's like Sci-Fi Channel made this thing. It's really bad. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be good, but I wasn't expecting it to be this bad.
Yeah.
Like, there's really nothing interesting in it.
Well, I have one question for you. Did they kill Michael Myers?
Well, no, because he's going to come back in subsequent movies.
Well, but were we intended to think that they killed him?
The original intention, which is somewhat creative, is that when Mike Myers is killed by half a dozen people shooting him with shotguns at the end, and Loomis says he's in hell, it's where he belongs.
Well, because they shoot him and he falls into like an abandoned mine shaft type thing.
So they're covering their bases, but one of the ways they went is with the Jamie killing her foster mother with a knife, and she's of course
with scissors.
And she's of course wearing a clown costume for Halloween, which is what Mike Myers was wearing at Halloween 1963, 25 years earlier when all this started. And so the idea of transitioning it to this
down
little
the
girl,
familial line.
That's kind of interesting. So I take it back. There's at least one interesting thing in this.
Yeah.
But that's literally like the last 2 minutes of the film.
And it's not greatly done.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
And they saved it for the end.
I guess we're gonna jump ahead a little. This has a IMDb aggregate rating of 5.8 stars and a Metacritic score of 34. How would you rate this film, Nate?
We're gonna really go out of order.
Yeah.
1 star, 3 stars on the 10 stars.
So you're putting this in like Star Wars Christmas special
it's
territory.
really bad.
So Mixed Nuts is better than this.
Mixed Nuts is better than this in that it is. There's not a million other Mixed Nuts that it's like ripping itself off from.
So I'm redeemed. I'm just kidding.
No such redemption for you.
I'm not going to give this quite as bad of a rating as you did. I'm going to give this 2 out of 10.
Halloween 4 has a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is generous. Were we going to talk about the body count?
Sure.
So on Fandom, it has a list of all the deaths in the various Halloween films, and so death number 1 is the attendant
At the
listed
service
as
station?
Jay Black. No, this is in the ambulance that's
Oh, yeah,
transferring.
you're right.
And he is killed by thumb driven into the forehead,
Yeah.
which is a new form of murder that he uses, I believe, 3 times, or 2 thumb deaths and then 1 full hand death.
Yeah.
So he's killed. Presumably, the other attendant, L. Evans, is killed with them because the ambulance is found trashed, like it's
Well, there would also be the
crashed off the
driver.
road. Yep, and that's the unknown paramedics, because there was 5 people in the car, including Meyers. So there's 2 unknown paramedics that also died. You then have the mechanic who was impaled with a metal rod. You then have, I guess, Shelley, who is the lady at the diner.
Yes.
We see her body. We got Bucky, the electrical technician, thrown on a transformer and electrocuted. Deputy Pierce is ripped apart in the house. And no, he's Deputy Pierce, I think, is at the police station. So he's killed.
Yes.
As is 2 other police officers ripped apart. Ted Hollister is shot repeatedly with 4 shotguns. I'm trying to remember, who's Ted Hollister?
Tim is the guy that the mob kills.
Oh yeah, the poor innocent guy that the mob kills, and that never comes back in the film.
Yeah.
They're going out there looking for Mike Myers. They kill Ted by accident, apparently to get away with it. Deputy Logan is mangled. That's number 10. Kelly Meeker, who's the sheriff's daughter. Sheriff is apparently a single father because we never hear anything about the mother. And she is going after Brady, who is the girl that is the guy that Rachel likes. So,
but she's our surrogate, loose moral
character. She is impaled through the chest with a shotgun pinned to a wall. Then Brady, the jock, he is thumb pushed in the face and neck snapped. Orrin Getaway is stabbed in the back. Alan Getaway stabbed in stomach, through back, entrails slashed. Unger is thrown off the moving pickup truck. And then Earl Ford, neck ripped open. That's a total of 16 deaths, which I believe, actually, of the Mike Myers films up to this point, that is the most, because he kills 7, or I guess there's 7 deaths in the first one, and I believe that includes a dog. And then there's 10 in this one, and there's actually, this list did not include the dog. There was a dog killed in this one as well. But Halloween 3 technically had more deaths in it.
But of those 16, only 12 are actually depicted, including the dog.
Oh, interesting.
Because the other 3 people in the ambulance, they don't show.
Oh,
Yeah. So Jamie in this movie, played by Danielle Harris, apparently sold the clown costume to a fan.
Oh.
I'm jumping into trivia from IMDb. Just so Danielle Harris wouldn't be scared, George P. Wilbur, who plays Michael Myers in this film, would often lift up his mask between takes to remind her that they were just making a movie and that he was not really going to hurt her. A scene was filmed to bridge the story with Halloween 2 from 1981. It was a flashback to the final part of Part 2, with a scene where Loomis is being tended to by paramedics when he sees the burning body of the Shape. Loomis exclaims to the EMS technicians to let him burn, but they douse the flaming body of Myers despite his pleas. This moment was added to Halloween Kills in 2021, with Laurie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, saying the line after she sets her house on fire, with Michael trapped at the end of Halloween from 2018. The girl Lindsay, who drives Rachel and Jamie to the discount mart, was going to be revealed as Lindsay Wallace from Halloween 1978, and have a larger part in the film as Rachel's friend and helping babysit Jamie, but that was cut for budget reasons.
She had an interesting, very 80s kind of vaguely punk look. I mean, it seemed like there was more there. So that's interesting to learn that there was.
The third boy hanging out with Brady and Wade in the drugstore was meant to be Tommy Doyle from the original film.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm starting to make these connections. It's been a while.
Series creator John Carpenter wrote a treatment for this film that had a more ghostly psychological approach to the Michael Myers mythos. It concerned the town of Haddonfield and what effect the events of the first 2 films had on its citizens. This concept was later rejected by the producers in favor of the typical slasher fare, at which point Carpenter left out of the film, making this the first in the series to not to have no participation from Carpenter.
You can kind of feel it.
Alan B. McElroy wrote the script in 11 days and beat the writer's strike by mere hours.
Wow.
That might be part of why this
Yeah.
is not great. During production of the rooftop chase, Ellie Cornell, who plays Rachel, was injured by a protruding nail as she slid down the roof. After a quick trip to the local hospital, she finished the scene with her bandages in place. According to Danielle Harris, it didn't even faze her. The Vincent drugstore that Jamie goes to buy a costume from is seen 5 years later in The Sandlot, 1993, when Smalls is on his way to the Sandlot for the first time.
Yeah, I know that place.
Yep. That same drugstore set was also used in Stephen King's The Stand in 1994.
Indeed. And is a couple miles from where we are now.
Yes, I was going to get to that in a minute. All right, that's all that's worth referencing there. As you just alluded to, filming locations. Most of this movie was filmed in Utah.
Interesting.
One location, the gas station scene,
Okay.
was filmed in Rush Valley at Penny's gas station.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where Rachel searches for Jamie and sees Michael Myers climbing the fence is at 234 Canyonside Road in Salt Lake City, Utah. The Haddonfield Police Department is the Midvale City Center, the old police station there on Center Street in Midvale. Earl's Bar was called the Ore House Saloon out on Old Bingham Highway.
Ah.
It would have had that name, O-R-E, Ore House, because that's out near Kennecott.
Okay.
So a reference to the ore. Haddonfield Elementary is an elementary school that's in downtown Salt Lake.
Now, one thought I had when they were running through this elementary school that looks like it was probably built in the 30s or 40s is that Haddonfield Elementary School, in the subsequent decades from the events in this film, was torn down, and another school was built in what had been the green area.
I believe that school is still there. It's 13th East and 7th South.
Okay.
So, the Ridgemont Federal Sanatorium is located at 400 East Capitol Park Avenue, so up near the Capitol. Vincent Drug is on 7696 South Main Street in Midvale,
As previously mentioned.
which is literally about 2.5 miles from where we're sitting right now. And we drove very near to it tonight.
I cut down that street all the time just because it's visually interesting.
Yeah. The Carruthers house is a house up, the sheriff's house, is a house up in the avenues.
Okay.
The power station scene was also filmed less than 2 miles from here over in Midvale.
Oh, okay. They should rename it the Bucky Memorial Power Station.
The bus depot was the Ogden Airport.
Okay.
The opening montage, The Farm with the Skeleton, was filmed in Brigham City, as well as some parts of that were filmed in Honeyville. The ambulance driving in the rain was filmed in Salt Lake City. The trick-or-treating scenes were filmed on Canyon Road in Salt Lake City. Yeah, and there were several additional scenes filmed up in the avenues. Yeah, this whole film was filmed. Looks like it was filmed here in Utah.
Yeah, interesting.
So, any other thoughts on this movie, Nate? We probably already talked about this longer than you thought.
It's really bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a bad movie.
This had an estimated budget of $5 million. Any ideas how it did?
Decent.
It had an opening weekend of $6.8 million and a domestic gross of $17.7 million, but I'm not seeing accurate figures for its worldwide gross.
I don't think that's significantly better than Halloween 3. Yeah. In fact, relatively speaking, Halloween 3 was made more money. It only cost $2.5 million to make and made $14.4 million. The fact that this movie cost $5 million in 1988 almost doesn't seem possible because there's not much to it.
There was quite a few number of locations here in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some money spent there, Loomis.
It seems cheap. It seems like a lot of corners were cut.
One deep cut I wanted to make on this one. The guy who plays Earl in the bar and drives the truck and has his throat slit, one of his other interesting credits is he's in the movie Goonies from 1985.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's an actor, as you mentioned, named Gene Ross. And in Goonies, he's man in shower number 1.
And he plays Warden Clemens in David Lynch's Lost Highway. Oh, and
Raymond O'Connor.
yeah,
He's in The Rock as Park Ranger Bob.
I've also seen him in commercials. He has a brief appearance on an episode of Babylon 5, which I very recently rewatched. So I'm like, hey, that guy.
He has a number of TV appearances as well. Yeah, not a great movie. Do you know much about the rest of the Halloween series? Does it actually improve from here?
I don't know. I just know, I believe that Donald Pleasance is in one more, and that Jamie Lee Curtis comes back at some point.
Yeah. Well, we have set the bar fairly low for this month. I'm fairly certain I already know what will be the number 4 for this month in the rankings.
I did think that the two leads, the L.A. Cornell and Danielle Harris, they did pretty well for what they were given.
Yeah. They did reasonably well.
Kudos for a reasonably good performance in a bad movie.
Yeah. Nate, I have a challenge for you because you have an undecided week for this month.
Yeah. Find something worse. Nah, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm Rob.
Well, I'm Nate.
And this was Rob and Nate Record a Podcast.
Good evening. Guten Abend. Those are going to be kind of like dumb and random outtakes if you decide to outtake them.
Brain fart.
That was torn down, correct? The old Art Deco thing?
Yeah, just recently torn down.
Yeah, well, like 4 or 5 years ago.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
The one on the corner by the Maverick?
Yeah. So there was the what I took to be the police station, and then there was
the police station was in the building.
Structure.
No, that's the police station was in that building.
Right, but there was some big something a couple buildings down that was.
That wasn't where this was filmed. Okay. This was filmed at the corner there by the Maverick.
And that is still there.
Yeah. You got some sort of outtake advertisement? You got any form of outtake that
Penny's
will
Garage.
make it past the edit?
Because I assume you'll. Brought to you by the Utah Film Commission.
I assume you'll curse in any outtake. The Utah Film Commission, I don't think existed back then.